and welcome to week 3. Since we're just starting the week that marks the halfway point for our semester, I hope that you're starting to get a feel of the communication processes involved in public relations. And so this week we're going to continue our micro level view of how to do public relations by looking at what I think is the most important topic, which is writing. Because you can do great research, but if you can't communicate it, you're not going to make any difference. So the writing is so important that we're looking at it in terms of two different issues. We're looking at it in terms of content and then mechanics. So content is your message, your thoughts, your ideas. What are you trying to convey? Is it meaningful? Is it relevant? Is it important? Because if you don't have a good message, then nobody's going to pay attention to you, or you're not going to make a big difference. But the other part of the equation is mechanics, and that's grammar, clarity, style, and stuff like that. And so you can have a great idea, but if you can't communicate it clearly, then again, you're not going to make a big difference. So the two really go hand in hand. So this week's lesson is somewhat brief because the readings that I gave you for this week really kind of cover these topics in great detail. So the Scott reading looks a lot at content and thought leadership and the idea of creating a relevant message and one that answers questions that people didn't even know they had. So it really focuses on how to get people engaged with your brand and get engaged with your product or your service. Not by selling it directly, but by creating a whole kind of life or persona around your brand. So it's a really great concept, and it's something that is more industry standard now, but a couple of years ago it was a really revolutionary idea, and we can see if we look at examples in real life how it just continues to evolve. And I try to throw a couple of examples in the lesson. And he also talks about overused language, so everything can't be groundbreaking, right? And so to that end, I also throw an excerpt or points from Frank Luntz's book, Words That Work, and he provides some really cool, concise rules for getting your points across with brevity and clarity. So that's in the lesson as well. Then the Reddish chapter talks about writing for the web. I only cover this briefly because now the way the new major is working, or even if you're in the old major, there is the possibility to take writing for the web, which is English 420, or I think this coming fall it's English 480, which I think is something like communication design for the web. But if you have questions about how that class fits into your degree, check with me before you register for it. I'd be happy to work with you on that. But so since we do have web writing courses available, and I'm not talking coding, I'm talking actual like writing content, check with me and I will help you out with that. But anyway, since we have those courses available, I don't cover it in too much detail here because chances are you'll be taking it in much more detail in another class. However, it's an important part of writing in public relations, so I do want to cover it at least a bit here. And then finally, there is a media release chapter on the Angel course shell, and that's where you'll find the Reddish reading. Also, they're both PDFs, and the Scott reading is, of course, from your textbook. But the media release chapter talks about the different types of media releases there are, and it really focuses, as does the lesson, on the inverted pyramid format as well as writing a strong lead. So the lead is that first paragraph, and that is just the who, what, when, where, why, and how. And a lot of times, if an editor or a journalist is trying to decide whether to pick up a media release or not, they will read that lead, and if the lead doesn't capture their interest and answer their questions, then they don't use the release altogether. So of course there's other factors that go into it, but that is a huge one. So capturing that lead is really important. And so I believe not this coming weekend, but the next weekend you have due a media release assignment. So it's a standalone assignment. I'll be sending out a video about it in a couple days, but you should really practice that. I'm happy and willing to look at drafts. So if you want to start writing it ahead of time and send me a draft, that would be great, and I will get back to you within a couple days of receiving it. So there is that. So to that end, corresponding with the readings and the lesson, there is a discussion about overused language. There is a grammar assessment, which is actually links to a couple different grammar assessments that you have to take, but because they don't submit to me, I need you to take screen captures of your scores, and then your grade is based on that. And then one more thing, creating a landing page. So this ties most directly to the Reddish chapter. talking about writing for the web, and so that is that, creating a landing page, which is really cool. So use whatever program you feel comfortable with. You could go as simple as Word, but do incorporate visuals in there as well. You could use PowerPoint, you could use Publisher, you could use Adobe, so depending on your skill set and your comfort level, there are a lot of different ways you can go with this. So I'll be looking at how well you tie the whole package together, how well you integrate visual and written communication, and how well you capture the idea of a landing page. And a landing page, Scott covers this in the reading, but a landing page is a page that is part of a website, but it's tied directly to a product or a search term or a service. So next week in media, I think that's next week, you'll see a landing page for Droid. And so if somebody's online and they're searching for Droid, rather than taking them to the Verizon homepage and then having them have to search for Droid, Verizon has a landing page just for Droid. And then a good landing page will also always link through to the primary page for that, for whatever company owns that product. So if you have any questions about that, I encourage you to do some outside research on landing pages to make sure yours kind of fits the criteria, and or you can reach out to me. And then there's a fresh current event discussion lead this week, and I think that it is interesting. It ties into a couple of issues with public relations, including kind of like the overlap between employee and organization. So if an employee does something wrong, how does this impact the organization, and what rights does the organization have, or should the organization have, in terms of kind of responding to or even policing something that an employee does on their own personal social media. And then also and also just the idea of how social media leads to more transparency, as well as a lot more opportunity for stakeholders to insert themselves into the organizational dialogue or the organizational narrative. So I encourage you to check that out, respond to it. Remember, you do have to respond to 3 separate discussion leads throughout the semester, and once you respond to the discussion lead, you should also respond to 2 other people in the discussion forum. Some weeks there's not going to be 2 other people. Last week there were only 3, so there was enough for people to do it there. So just, if there's only 1 other person in the discussion forum, just respond to that 1 other person. And I think that is about it. In terms of your current event discussion leads, just remember, as you prepare your own personal discussion lead, to really make the ties to public relations specific and concrete, and even in the question that you pose to the class, try to make it tie tightly to public relations. And don't be afraid to skip ahead to topics that we haven't covered yet, although you're welcome to stay within the realm of the topics that we've covered. So I guess that's it. I hope you enjoy this week's lesson, and I will see you in the classroom this week.